Hello, I'm Sophie Till. This is a series of presentations about the Taubman-Gelansky approach to strings. The presentations form a comprehensive series, but have also been designed to work alone so they can be used in various ways. They address some of the fundamental principles of the approach and show how these principles can provide answers to some of the most commonly asked questions by players of all levels, from professionals to students. The information presented makes most sense when we feel it ourselves, combining knowledge and sensation. There is an immediately recognizable, clear physical logic to it. While these presentations are not a substitute for hands-on work, they can offer an entry point to this wonderful information. The practice spectrum. In general, our value system for practicing, and many aspects of our culture also, is based on the assumption that more is better. More hours must be better, and if we aren't getting the right result, we must need to work harder. When our hours of work still don't yield the right results, we often end up thinking that we must not be talented enough, or perhaps we need to find a way to work even harder. It is a demoralizing and frustrating process. But we don't need more hours, we need the right knowledge. We need the knowledge of how. In other words, the concrete physical knowledge of the movements that enable us to achieve the specific result we are aiming for. This precise physical knowledge of the tiny world of motion that goes into playing is what the Taubman-Gelansky approach is about. Identifying and itemizing all the minute movements needed, explaining how they interact, and then how they go into music making of the highest caliber. As a result of the highly developed pedagogy and the clarity of language that goes with it, we are all able to access and acquire this knowledge. The how, or the knowledge of what we are doing, also needs to be understood in the context of the way the brain and the body learn to do things. So we practice in a way that is complementary to that. The time we spend practicing is of no value in itself. What makes practice time valuable is its dedication to the precise task at hand. The amount of time spent should be dictated by an understanding of the process we are involved in and the precise result at the end of that process. This leads us to a different understanding of practicing. So at one end of the practice spectrum, if we are learning to recognize a tiny movement, then hours at it will not work. A few minutes of precisely locating that movement for a very short amount of time, visiting it often and spread out over the day, will enable me to recognize and retain the right feeling regularly, making it clear and familiar. If I do it for hours, I will lose it, and by the time I stop, I am leaving the body with a bad version of it. This is unhelpful, a waste of time, and slows down the process. So we are really talking about a few minutes. Then, when we have worked in a movement, we can move along the practice spectrum and start to apply it specifically to passages in the music. This takes a different amount of time. I need time to feel how that movement or combination of movements works in the music, and then time to apply that to relevant places. When the brain can no longer process the information, I have to stop. Of course I can come back later, but it is of no value to continue. Acknowledging this moment when we need to stop requires some honesty with ourselves. We are generally not very good at it, but it is ultimately faster and therefore more rewarding. Moving further along the spectrum, once all these movements are interacting well, they don't need babysitting anymore, and simply listening will call them to order and into action as required. Again, this will need a different amount of time. Moving along the spectrum is fluid, as our knowledge grows and deepens with experience, but we have to always be clear as to our location along it and ready to stay there or move on as the body tells us what it needs and where our understanding has got to.